Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
Hello everybody, how are you? I'm live on Rumble and TikTok at the same time. Just been talking to people on TikTok just before this live stream started, and the first question, we're going to talk about the Twitter files today, by the way, and the first question that I got asked was, do you think Elon Musk has got long left on this planet? I don't think it's that bad. I really don't. So for those of you joining, hi to everybody on TikTok and hi to everybody on Rumble. Elon Musk has bought Twitter. Some people think that's a good thing. Some people think it's a bad thing. I'm indifferent. And he's given access to a hell of a lot of the, well, I say a lot, a huge cache of internal documents from Twitter's archives, which shows just how embedded that Twitter has been in the past with intelligence operations. And well, basically what it shows is that the intelligence agencies in the United States have been using Twitter to spread false stories, to spread lies, and to spread propaganda. And it's a huge story. You won't hear it on the mainstream media. They're not going to be talking about this because, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they're in on it. And we're going to talk about that in some depth today. I haven't actually gone through all the files yet. I've read in depth the first 3 or 4 releases that came out. I think there's about 8 or 9 now. So we're actually going to go through them today. And fortunately, one of the journalists that has been reporting on these files is the great Matt Taibbi. And he's done a overview of basically what is in the files, what the files mean, and just how bad this is for various rights that people have. Now, for those of you that don't know Matt Taibbi, He's a great journalist in America, and he's been covering, well, I mean, I've been following him now for 6 or 7 years or something like that. And he was on the campaign trail, I remember, in 2016, and he was talking to people about Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I've read his book, Hating, and in that book, he talks about how there was a real disconnect between the way the media were reporting things and what people on the ground were actually saying to him. It's a great book. You should go and read it. But anyway, he was one of the journalists he's one of the journalists that's been reporting on them. And let's get into it, shall we? And let's talk about what's in them and why they should be such a big deal. So this is his Twitter account, and this is the first thread, the Twitter files, how Twitter let the intelligence community in. Now, what I'm going to do, rather than I was going to actually go through this one by one with you. It was going to be about 4 hours long, this live stream was. But I thought, wouldn't it be better if I just looked at an overview of it, so I didn't bore you with all the details and basically go off on whatever tangent I felt was relevant while we go through it. So this is for those of you on TikTok, I'm reading from Matt Taibbi's Substack now, and he's done an overview of the parts of the Twitter files that have been dropped and their significance. So he says this. It's January the 4th, 2023, which means Twitter file stories have been coming out for over a month. Because these are weedy tales and may be hard to follow if you haven't from the beginning, I've written up capsule summaries of each of the threads by all of the Twitter files reporters and added links to the threads and accounts of each. At the end, in response to some readers, especially foreign ones, who found some of the alphabet soup government agency names confusing, I've included a brief glossary of terms to help as well. So, in order, the Twitter file threads are these. So Twitter Files Part 1 was dropped on December the 2nd, 2022, and it covered Twitter and the Hunter Biden laptop story. You remember the classic disinformation campaign that all those NSA and CIA analysts said it's classic Russian disinformation campaign textbook. That's what they said it was. They knew all along that it was real, and the laptop was Hunter's and the files on it were genuine. This explains it. Twitter and the Hunter Biden laptop story. Recounting the internal drama at Twitter surrounding the decision to block access to a New York Post expose on Hunter Biden in October 2020. So you might remember the New York Post broke the story on Hunter Biden's laptop, and as a result of these intel agencies calling it a classic Russian disinformation campaign, despite the fact that they knew that the Hunter Biden was laptops and the files on it were genuine, Twitter then locked out the New York Post from its Twitter account, banned them. They wouldn't allow any links to the story from the website. They wouldn't allow the story to spread amongst people, wouldn't allow it to get to your ears. Truthful, factual information about the president's son and possible, well, crimes. It's a big story, isn't it? Right before an election. We'll get into how the story developed and how long the agencies knew that the laptop was genuine a little bit later, no doubt. But Matt says this, the key revelations are, Twitter blocked the story on the basis of its, quote, hacked materials policy, but executives internally knew the decision was problematic. Quote, can we truthfully claim this is part of the policy, is how communications official Brandon Borman put it. And also, when a Twitter contractor polls members of Congress about the decision, they hear Democratic members want more moderation, not less. And the First Amendment isn't absolute. So this is Congress people going against the First Amendment of the United States here and trying to silence and discredit truthful information and calling people who spread that information conspiracy theorists and useful idiots for Russia. Now, All of that started with Russiagate, of course, and this is one of the things that we're seeing born from that. Again, we'll get into this a bit later. On December the 6th, Matt dropped a supplemental. The exiting of Twitter Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker. A second round of Twitter files release was delayed as new addition Barry Weiss discovers former FBI General Counsel and Twitter Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker was reviewing the first batches of Twitter files documents whose delivery to reporters had slowed. Let me just repeat that. A second round of Twitter files releases was delayed as new addition Barry Weiss discovers former FBI General Counsel and Twitter Deputy General Counsel Jim Baker was reviewing the first batches of Twitter files documents whose delivery to reporters had slowed. So this is somebody at Twitter. Once the Twitter files was dropped, the second batch was dropped because Jim Baker, who worked at Twitter, who was the former FBI General Counsel, was reviewing all the documents. I didn't know that. Didn't know that happened. So part 2 dropped on. So that's an outline of part 1. Let's talk about it a little bit. What do you think in the chat about that? What do you think about the revelations that the Hunter Biden laptop story was discredited? Do you remember in the media? Do you remember how it was discredited? I think my mate Orf did a video on this. Let's have a look. I wouldn't be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of the videos that they took down. Global citizen, not a globalist, says both FBI, CIA all ran towards tech industry to infiltrate and spy not only on Americans but the world. This is absolutely true. This is what it's showing. People knew, but the cabal wanted to control it all to appoint Biden. Hi, Jax. How are you? Nice to see you. Jack shit. I like that. I like that name. Jack shit. So, I mean, they've suppressed a massive story there, haven't they? Do you remember all of the supposed intel analysts who said it was Russian disinformation? Oh, this is it. Brilliant. Thank you, Orf. I'm going to show you video, mate. Don't worry, I'm not profiting from it. I'm sure you don't. I'm sure you won't mind.
Incriminating evidence allegedly found on a laptop belonging to Biden.
Some sort of Russian?
So, oops. So, this is a friend of mine, Matt Orfler, in America. He does videos for Matt Taibbi at his Substack and a variety of other places as well. And, you know, Bernie Sanders once was close to working with him. You know, that's how famous Orf is. He did this great little video on what the intelligence analysts, the supposed intelligence community, was saying about the Hunter Biden laptop story. And they were suppressing it coming out on Twitter. They knew it was accurate. They knew it was true. They had the laptop. The intelligence community had the laptop from at least December the year before. So they knew it was Hunter Biden's laptop. And they knew the information on it was accurate. So they knew that the information that was being spread was accurate. But they discredited it anyway. This is a great little video by Orf. Take a listen.
Incriminating evidence allegedly found on a laptop belonging to Biden.
Some sort of Russian disinformation campaign effort.
One eternity later.
Biden emails finally authenticated according to the New York Times.
It's rewind time.
It's a lie.
Altered or fake, unverified emails.
The story did not quite land due to the lack of verification.
So this is how they covered it at the time. This is how the fake news media covered it. This is when it came out. This is how they covered it. Talk about running interference for the intelligence community.
What can't be verified?
The laptop.
Why do you say that?
Well, because it can't be verified.
I don't even want to report this. This is one of the most powerful families in Washington.
Liz, I'm a journalist.
Okay, I would love if you guys would start doing that verification.
No, we're not going to do your work for you.
It's a journalist's job.
Not anymore.
It's a journalist's job to verify that stuff is true. That's literally what they're supposed to do. So funny this is.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
Not really stories, just pure distractions. No serious journalist should fall for it.
It's a journalist's job to find out if this is verified.
The bottom line is we cannot confirm the story.
Experts say the emails cannot be authenticated.
The mainstream media is not reporting on this story because we can't authenticate this material.
The Hunter Biden laptop material is genuine.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
It just lacks credibility. The fact that it appeared in the New York Post, the only place low enough.
I'd just like to point out, right, that this is the same media that talk non-stop about a P tape. Do you remember? They talk non-stop about it. There was the second season of The Good Fight, which was a spin-off from a good show called The Good Wife. The second season, I think it was, concentrated on the PP tape. And there were apparently lawyers going around trying to get access to it for the Democratic Party. The propaganda seeping into people's minds at this stage is insane.
Enough to put this orphan bastard story in print.
Obvious disinformation.
It is so obviously a Russian operation.
So obviously disinformation.
So obviously a Russian plot. Tell me why it's so obviously a Russian plot to you.
This is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work.
Right.
I'd just like to go back to that guy. Okay, that guy is James Clapper. He lied to the Senate. Congressional hearing, a Senate hearing, and he lied to them about the spying on every civilian in the United States. They have it all. He said not wittingly. He knew that it was a lie. Faced no ramifications whatsoever. Ended up getting a job on CNN, I think. Talk about having your intelligence agent. I mean, what? Come on, Mockingbird didn't end, did it? He's literally got a job at CNN now, I think, that guy. Let me just check that. Sure, it's CNN he went to. Anyway, it was one of them. It was either CNN or MSNBC. But they're literally, you know, it used to be the case that Mockingbird put journalists in your media without you knowing about it. Well, now they're on the camera. Got away with lying. Should have gone to prison for that. Anyway.
Right, exactly. And this is classic, very classic Russian disinformation tactic.
Your classic disinformation campaign.
We shouldn't look at it as anything other than a Russian disinformation operation.
Known.
You can go and see the rest of that video. Media lies, Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes once I've finished down below. It's a great video by Matt Orfler, that is. You should go and check it out. But that's the point I want to make. You know, this is the intelligence communities literally creating their own news here. They knew the laptop was real. They had it in their own possession since December the year before. This laptop that shows, well, evidence of, listen, it looks like they're crimes. Looks like this is criminal activity, and it looks like it's not just the president's son, but the president himself may even be implicated in this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, hold 10 for the big guy when they're sorting out deals with China. That's the way the mafia works. So the entire intelligence community come out and say that that is fake, and they get Twitter to silence it and to discredit it as a Russian disinformation campaign. Remember, this is after Russiagate in 2016, the bogus story that somehow Donald Trump was Vladimir Putin's puppet because of a P-tape. What? How preposterous is this? But they report on that, but not the laptop story. So that was the overview of the first batch of Twitter files that were dropped. The second batch was dropped by journalist Barry Weiss. And this is the overview of the second batch, the second drop. Twitter's secret blacklists. Barry Weiss gives a long-awaited answer to the question, was Twitter shadow banning people? It did. Only the company calls it visibility filtering. So that's nice, isn't it? So they always said, no, we don't shadow ban people. We visibility filter them. You know, that's how pathetic it is. So you technically, yeah, we don't shadow ban just because we do, but we don't call it that. It's like, no, we don't torture people. We never torture people. We just subject them to enhanced interrogation. And this is Twitter lying through their teeth about it. They always said we don't shadow ban. They did. They just called it a different name. Visibility filtering. Twitter also had a separate higher council called SIP-PES that decided cases for high visibility, controversial accounts. People at Silicon Valley deciding what's true and what's not. I mean, do you want to live in a world where people in Silicon Valley and tech geeks are deciding what's true and what's not based on pressure being put on them by intelligence communities? Because that's what this is showing. And it's showing just to what degree they silence people. And just how high profile accounts get differential treatment to the low profile ones. You know, nobody will miss a load of, I don't know, Palestinian accounts they told to censor. But if it's James Woods, there might be a bit of a kerfuffle if they ban him. Do you see what I mean? The key revelations were Twitter had a huge toolbox for controlling the visibility of any user, including a search blacklist. For Dan Bongino, they said he was on a search blacklist, and a trends blacklist for Stanford's Dr. J. Bhattacharya. I'm sorry, doctor, but you were on a trends blacklist and a do not amplify setting for conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Weiss quotes a Twitter employee, quote, think about visibility filtering as being a way for us to suppress what people see to different levels. It's a very powerful tool with help from Abigail Schreier, Schellenberger, blah, 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 blah. So that was the revelations of the second file. So not only the intelligence community suppressing stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story and discrediting them as Russian information when they're clearly disinformation when it's clearly not, and it's clearly in the public's interest for that story to be out. Not only are they doing that, but they're also censoring and putting people on secret blacklists and search blacklists, etc. My first thought is, am I on these lists? Is there any way of checking? I know they got the shadow ban one, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. for people, a lot of people have been saying that, by the way, that proves that they were censoring conservatives. That's not necessarily true, by the way. They were censoring people all across the spectrum. It wasn't just conservatives. I don't like how the people try to say that, oh, they were censoring the right with that. No, it was all the way across. There are certain people, obviously, that were on the right and known conservatives, but they were just certain examples, you know. They were censoring anybody the state didn't want to be trending, or any topics that they didn't want to be trending, or anybody from trending at all. In the case of that doctor, which it was something to do with the thing. Yeah, I'm not even going to mention it. I fear I'll violate some sort of guideline. But you see what I mean. They're manipulating the truth here. It's not censoring disinformation. It's not fighting disinformation. It's spreading disinformation and using a social network to do it. So part 3 of the Twitter files was by Matt Taibbi, and that centered around the removal of Donald Trump between October 2020 and January the 6th, 2021. It was first in a 3-part series looking at how Twitter came to the decision to suspend Donald Trump. The idea behind the series is to show how all of Twitter's visibility filtering tools were on display and deployed after January the 6th, 2021. The key revelations were Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth not only met regularly with the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, but with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Also, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is, by the way, he's the guy who sort of collates all of the information from all of the other 16 intelligence agencies. It used to be James Clapper at one stage. Also, Twitter was aggressively applying visibility filtering tools to Trump well before the election. Now, think what you want about Donald Trump, but he's censoring him. Should that be something that a tech company, at the request of intelligence agencies, do? To censor their own sitting president? I mean, that violates all sorts of laws, doesn't it? Shouldn't it? Shouldn't that be a huge deal? Now, I'm no Trump fan, I'm not, but I can see why he's aggrieved at this. Because it's clearly been suppressed, this story has. Now, whether Trump is a good guy, I don't think that at all, by the way. I don't think there are any good guys here. But surely people should be outraged about their intelligence agencies doing this. Let's not forget, you know, there are history here of these of the intelligence agencies in America. I mean, do you think everything that the CIA have been telling you in history about their history has been true? Do you think everything that we are told about the official story to do with JFK's assassination is true? Do you think that what they told us about 9/11 was true? Knowing that intelligence agencies lie to get us into wars all the time. The Gulf of Tonkin was a lie. Incubator babies was a lie. All the lies that we were told about Afghanistan for a period of years. I mean, they just lied incessantly. And what did they use to lie to us? The New York Times, the Washington Post, and eventually social media. The length to which the Twitter files shows, I mean, we always thought it, but what the Twitter files show is just the length to which the public are being propagandized by their own intelligence communities. Now, this just shows the America. I dare say the same thing has gone on with the UK one. Are you okay with that? With intelligence agencies deciding what the truth is? They lie to us about everything. Everything. In part 4 of the Twitter files, the thread by Michael Schellenberger looks at the key data after the January 6th riots and before Trump would ultimately be banned from Twitter on January the 8th, showing how Twitter internally reconfigured its rules to make the Trump ban fit their policies. You can see how through that that Twitter thread by Michael Schellenberger, that they are twisting themselves into knots to try and make the ban fit. They just want to ban him. And they're desperately trying to use whatever mental gymnastics possible. Because if you actually look at Donald Trump's tweets, his Twitter has been reinstated, of course, but he's not back on it. But I want to just show his tweets to show, you know, just the scale to which they banned him. This tech company. Remember, this is a president of the United States. This is the president. Okay, now whatever you think of Donald Trump, should Twitter be allowed to, or any social media company be allowed to, what do you think in the chat? What do you think? Do you think Twitter should be able to silence a president? And if you think he should be able to silence Donald Trump, should they be able to silence Biden? I can give you, and I have given you, lots of incidences where Biden lies through his teeth, but the media don't seem to care about that, do they? It's interesting. So here's his tweets. Here's his last tweets, Donald Trump's last tweets. And why you got banned. So there was a rally where he said what he said at the rally, and then he said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of the country. Stay peaceful. This is all January the 6th. And then he says, I am asking everyone at the US Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue, the police officers. Thank you. And then he makes this speech, 2 minutes 41 seconds. And then he says, the 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first and make America great again. We have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape or form. And then he says, to all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January the 20th. And because of that, Twitter bent themselves into a pretzel and banned him. And what these files show is just the internal communications and how it transpired and the pressure and the manipulation tactics that intelligence agencies use to suppress information, truthful information, from reaching the eyes and ears of an electorate, i.e. they're stopping them being informed. The key revelations were, at least from part 4, were at least one Twitter employee worried about a slippery slope in which an online platform CEO with a global presence can gatekeep speech for the entire world. This is exactly what I've been saying for years, by the way. I hate, I should be crowing, but I only to be hit. So that person got shot down. Of course they did. It's been my point for about 5 years, but of course they got shut down. Also, Chief Censor Roth argues for a ban on Congressman Matt Gaetz, even though it doesn't quite fit anywhere. So he's calling for the silencing of a person who has not, to his own admission, broken any rules. Just because he works at a tech company and he can do what he wants. He can act like God and switch people off and on at will. Twitter changed its public interest policy to clear a path for Trump's removal. So, like I say, they bent themselves into a pretzel. Part 5 of the Twitter files. What do you think about that? For the people in the chat, talk to me. What do you think? Marvin Gibbons just says, the one thing you can say about Donald is he's not confused or senile. No, you can't say that about other people, can you? Like I say, I'm no big fan of Donald Trump, but I'm a big fan of free speech, and it's like Chomsky says: if you support free speech, then you support free speech for those who you don't like, and that's specifically who needs it the most. I think you know who controls them all, say so. I don't. I really don't. Loz says, I don't know a lot about the Twitter files. Musk seems to be throwing them a massive tantrum, though. No, I don't think he is, Loz. I think you're misinformed there. Stick around. I'll tell you about them. It's horrific. The Twitter files are horrific. I mean, whatever Elon Musk's intentions are and whether this has been a good thing or bad thing for him, I'm very happy that he's done it. I'm very happy that he's released these files. So, you know, respected journalists can go through them and tell us just what's been going on, because I've been screaming about this for years and I know other people have too. And this is confirming everything that we said to be true. All along, I've been saying, no, Russiagate was bogus. It was an intelligence operation. It was fake news spread by the intelligence companies in the United States. And here we are, and they've got caught red-handed here. This is 100% proof of them doing it with a laptop story. So you can't now say, oh, well, it's a conspiracy theory for to think that Russiagate was an intelligence job, because they've got form for it, and here's the proof. We can see that they're doing it just a few years later, what I said they were doing back in 2016, 2017, and many other people. Nutty Natter says, oh, it's incredible. Hold on to your hat. Twitter has been caught red-handed. It's not just Twitter, Nutty Natty. Because from what I can tell, Jack, who previously owned Twitter, didn't really know much about this. From what I can tell. From what I can tell, he was like on spa days in Asia somewhere before he finally got rid of it and sold it all. I don't think he was aware of it. It's not really Twitter that's been caught red-handed either. It's the hierarchy of Twitter, yes, but it's the intelligence agencies, and you'll find out just how they infiltrate and set up avenues of one-way communication. It's Orwellian, to say the least. And anybody who's read 1984 will know what I mean by that. They're consigning certain things to the memory hole, literally. So Twitter Files Part 5 concentrated on the final removal of Donald Trump on January the 8th. As angry as many inside Twitter were with Donald Trump after the January 6th Capitol riots, staffers struggled to suspend his account, saying things like, quote, I think we'd have a hard time saying this is incitement. As documented by Weiss, they found a key way to pull the trigger anyway. Like I just explained to you, we just went through. I don't see anything there in those tweets that remotely constitutes a ban. I really don't. As much as I dislike him, I don't think tech companies should be silencing any president anywhere. The key revelations were that there were dissenters in the company. Maybe because I am from China, said one employee. I deeply understand how censorship can destroy the public conversation. So even the Chinese people at Twitter at the time were like, whoa, hold on a minute. Can we just think about this level of censorship, please? But are overruled by senior executives like Vijaya Gadde. Vijaya Gadde, I'm pretty sure, used to be Hillary Clinton's lawyer. She was a lawyer for the Democratic Party, or the DNC. I'm positive of it. Yeah, that's her. I was right. So you might remember, for those of you who watched the Joe Rogan Experience, she was on with Tim Pool, with Joe Rogan and Jack. And she was, she served as general counsel at the head of legal policy and trust at Twitter. Her role included handling issues such as harassment, misinformation, and harmful speech. Now, she used to, I'm sure, work for the DNC. I'm sure I heard that. Just bear me a second. Let me confirm it. I don't want to spread misinformation, you see, because I'm not the mainstream media. I'll come back to it. Anyway, people who were saying that basically censorship is bad, Chinese people who worked at Twitter who were saying censorship is bad. Can we have a think about this, please? We're overruled by Vijaya Gadde. I don't know how to say her name. I'm very sorry if I've got it wrong. But overruled by her and Roth, who noted many on Twitter staff were citing, quote, the banality of evil. That's a throwback to Nazis, that is. That's a throwback to Nazi stuff. Saying, oh, we're just following orders here and we're going along with Nazism. They're likening not censoring the president with going along with Nazism. And comparing those who favoured sticking to a strict legalistic interpretation of Twitter rules, i.e. keep Trump, who had no violation, to Nazis following orders. Just think about that. These people, these tech executives, senior tech executives, and people at Twitter are talking about we've got to ban Donald Trump, because otherwise, we're just going along with Nazis. These people don't have a clue what has gone on in the last 5 or 6 years. They haven't got a clue what reality really is, what the truth is. Not a clue. And they're making decisions to censor presidents. Not just us. They're censoring us widespread. But it's got to the situation now where they're censoring presidents from speaking. That's a really slippery slope, if you ask me. Jack on TikTok has just said, shows even more how the election was rigged. Now remember, they said it was Russian that hacked the 2016 election. Do you remember? It was Russia that did it. How? Well, something to do with the DNC. I don't know. We'll come to that in a bit. Stick around. Hi, Alex, by the way. Hi, Alex. I will see you soon. Alex. Yeah, I can see your text, mate. I can see what you're saying. Hi, Alex. I can see you. I'm going to be down in London in the next couple of weeks. I'll let you know when. We'll meet up at Piccadilly. All right. So, Part 6 of the Twitter files was by Matt Taibbi as well, and it talked about how Twitter had become basically a subsidiary for the FBI. Twitter's contact with the FBI was, quote, constant and pervasive, as FBI personnel, mainly in the San Francisco field office, regularly sent lists of reports to Twitter, often about Americans with low follower counts making joke tweets. Tweeters both on the left and the right were affected, and they were just banning them and search banning them. And obviously people with low follower accounts, they don't really have a voice. But here's the FBI, they don't really have a voice. The only thing that they can say is on social media. And here's the FBI just coming in with lists, loads of people, and Twitter are just arbitrarily banning them all. And only really paying attention if it's a whole high profile account. I mean, this is cast iron evidence, as far as I'm concerned, through these files, that the intelligence community has been manipulating on the online discourse in America. And pretty much everything that they believe to be true is now false. What was that statement by Bill Casey? Do you remember Bill Casey? CIA director, 1981. Reportedly, he said this. Reportedly in 1981, let me talk about this. In 1981, this is reported from two sources as well. Barbara Honegger is one of them. And I spoke to a guy in the CIA about this, and he confirmed to me that this is true. And in 1981, just after President Reagan was elected, he's inaugurated in January, and then a month or so later is his first, what they call chief of staff meeting, where you get the heads of all the major, the Army, the Navy, blah, 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 CIA, etc. And Bill Casey was the CIA director, and he'd become CIA director at the time. Reagan had appointed him. It's his first big meeting. And what Reagan asked his chief of staff were, what has surprised you the most about your time in the job so far? And Bill Casey said to him words to this effect. He said, what surprised us the most is most of our intelligence in the CIA we get from open sources, we get from the media. And Reagan then said to him, well, what are you going to do then? He says, well, we'll create a disinformation campaign. And Reagan said, well, okay, how will you know when your campaign is complete? And Bill Casey replied with these words: we will know our disinformation campaign is complete when everything the American public believe is false. Well, this is the Twitter files proving that the disinformation campaign is complete. This is proving it. It is complete. They have achieved their goal. They're not just doing it through the TV either, through your cable news. They're doing it through the very social media platforms that were meant to connect us all. Do you remember? That was the beauty of social media. You could connect with everybody on the planet. Well, guess what? We connected. And then the intelligence services in America went, oh my God, what have we done? Let's disconnect them all and silence them. And this Twitter files is proving it to be true. The key revelations from part 6 were a senior Twitter executive reports the FBI was adamant no impediments to sharing classified information exist. Twitter also agreed to bounce content on the recommendations of a wide array of governmental and quasi-governmental factors, from the FBI to the Homeland Security Agency CISA to Stanford's Election Integrity Project to state governments. The company one day received so many moderation requests from the FBI, an executive congratulated staffers at the end for completing the, quote, monumental undertaking. Wow. I mean, where's the disconnect here between the FBI? Where does the FBI end and Twitter begin? Does Twitter begin at this stage, or is it just a tool of the FBI? I think the latter is true, don't you? So part 7 concentrates on Hunter Biden's laptop again, and Schellenberger, Mr. Schellenberger, was it Mike Schellenberger? Anyway, he reported on it. The Twitter Files story increased its focus on the company's relationship to federal law enforcement and intelligence in part 7, and shows the intense communication between the FBI and Twitter just before the release of the post-Hunter Biden story. By the way, the FBI had set up a channel to a person in Twitter who had got top security clearance, who just happened to be this Jim Baker guy who was reviewing the files, so it meant that the part 2 was delayed. But anyway, they'd got a one-way communication with it. So the only person who could see it was people within Twitter who had security FBI clearance, so Jim Baker. And it was one way. And they disintegrated. You know how in Mission Impossible this message will self-destruct in? Well, these messages were self-destructing. So we don't know what these communications were. That separate communication, we don't know what it were. This is just what we know from the Twitter files. What actually went on is way more damning. Let's face it. The key revelations from part 7, Matt says, were San Francisco agent Elvis Chan, quote, sends 10 documents to Twitter's then head of site integrity, Yoel Roth, through Teleporter, a one-way communications channel from the FBI to Twitter. That's what I just explained. The evening before the release of the post story. Oh no, it went to Yoel Roth, so that one you didn't need to have security clearance through Teleporter. Okay. Also, Baker, in an email, explains Twitter was compensated for processing requests by the FBI, saying, I'm happy to report we have collected $3.4 million. So the FBI were paying Twitter to do this. The FBI were paying Twitter to undertake the monumental task of silencing American citizens in direct violation of the First Amendment. I mean, if you want to look at fascism, there it is. There is a government conspiring with a private entity to silence Americans, to silence people, to silence free speech. That is an act of fascism. These people screaming the banality of evil have got things so back to front and upside down and inside out and the wrong way round. They say they're fighting fascism by doing acts of fascism. And the FBI are compensating them for it. $3.4 million. Just America, says Angel Wolf. I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know. I highly suspect not. I highly suspect MI5 would be way worse than the FBI and CIA here. I highly suspect that. We don't have these free speech. We don't have a First Amendment in the UK. So they can really do whatever they want in our country legally to us. So, I mean, how have our intelligence services, do you think, been acting with Twitter and Facebook, etc., to stop the spread of, I don't know, what they class as disinformation to do with Jeremy Corbyn and the anti-Semitism smear? Do you see what I mean? How have they conspired with social media to be able to spread that lie so convincingly? Because large portions of the United Kingdom now believe that Jeremy Corbyn, the most anti-racist politician I think Westminster has certainly had in my lifetime, is somehow a raging racist who hates the Jews. They've convinced a large portion of the public. I mean, is it too much of a stretch to think that MI5, GCHQ, it's going to be way more intrusive than the CIA, isn't it? MI5, you mean the guys who started relationships with the protesters that they were surveilling, says Jess. Yes, that MI5. Exactly. We're far more intrusive in this country, aren't we? We don't have a First Amendment. So it must be happening. Elon, can you send me Twitter files UK? Jack says, I believe these secret agencies birthed these big tech companies as disinformation operations. There is evidence to back that up, you know. CIA cutouts, I believe, were heavily invested in Facebook right at the very beginning. And I also hear Microsoft as well through... there's a great book by Vandana Shiva called Oneness versus the 1%. She talks about Bill Gates. And these are not good people. They're really not. So there you go. That, so there's the information. There's the email from Elvis Chan, FBI agent at the San Francisco office. So part 8 of the Twitter files is by Li Feng. Li Feng I know to be a great reporter. I've covered his stuff in the past on my YouTube channel back in the day. He works for, I believe, The Intercept. I think he's one of the few left at The Intercept that I could say is a good reporter. He may have moved on by now, though. So he may be on Substack, I don't know. But I know he was at The Intercept. Anyway, part 8 is how Twitter quietly aided the Pentagon's covert online psyop campaign. Li Feng takes a fascinating detour looking at how Twitter for years approved and supported Pentagon-backed covert operations, noting the company explicitly testified to Congress that it didn't allow such behavior. The platform nonetheless was a clear partner in state-backed programs involving fake accounts. Now, I've covered a few weeks ago, well, it was probably back in November actually, how there was a study by an Australian university that showed the overwhelming amount of bot accounts and the overwhelming amount of bot activity came from within the United States. And from what all the evidence that they were pointing through, they were not Russian accounts. They were not controlled by Russia. They didn't come from the Internet Research Agency or anything like that. But it coincided with American times, and I pretty much have put 2 and 2 together there and come up with 5. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are bots being run by government agencies. We know that the UK has our own bot farming people with the 77th Brigade up in the north. We know this. I'm not talking conspiracy theory here. And we also know that Israel have their troll farms. So this is something that governments do. This is not conspiracy theory. We know that they do this. The UK have their 77th Brigade, like I say. So you can see how, while shutting down free speech with part 8, they're not just shutting down free speech of ordinary people in violation of their First Amendment, but they're then using their own accounts, and obviously not reporting them, to spread disinformation online to support whatever coup that is the CIA and intelligence services are doing wherever they're around the world. The key revelations of it are after the US Central Command, called CENTCOM, sent over a list of 52 Arab language accounts, quote, we use to amplify certain messages. Twitter agreed to whitelist them. So they sent a list of 52 accounts that the CIA use to amplify propaganda over in other countries, specifically over in other countries, I assume, 52 Arab language accounts. So it'll probably be propaganda and psyops that they're doing in Iran, Saudi Arabia, etc. Yemen, maybe Iraq, Syria, definitely. Do you see my point? And Twitter agreed to whitelist them. So yeah, no problem. You can just spread whatever bullshit you want. We don't care. It's in another country. Who gives a shit? I mean, this is US. Twitter really should have come with, like Caitlin Johnston says, it should say Twitter on Twitter, asterisk US state affiliated media, shouldn't it, really? With this level of state involvement. And remember, our media are not talking about any of this, by the way, are they? They're not talking about any of this at all. You've got to ask why. Why aren't they? Is it because they're just as complicit? Would explain it, wouldn't it? Ultimately, the program would be outed in the Washington Post in 2022, 2 years after Twitter and other platforms stop assisting. But contrary to what came out in those reports, Twitter knew about and or assisted in these programs for at least 3 years, from 2017 to 2020. So they're saying that they don't do it anymore. Honest. Do you believe them? Lee wrote a companion piece for The Intercept here. So he does still work at The Intercept. Twitter aided the Pentagon in its covert online propaganda campaign. Okay, part 9. Jack says manipulation. It's manipulation of the truth, isn't it? It's manipulation of the facts. If we hang, this is why I keep saying that Julian Assange is so important that we free him. If we extradite him to the United States, what we're saying is the United States intelligence companies, the United States deep state, the CIA, they have control over what the truth is. And we're saying that, yeah, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to dictate to other countries what the truth is. Otherwise, you can pluck their reporters out and sling them in a secret trial in Virginia, where you can't even make a public interest defence, and then off for SAMs you go, special administrative measures. Richard says, and another elephant in the room, Cambridge Analytica got Donald Trump elected and Brexit. You do have to start questioning other things that went on previous. And you do have to question just how much of our history, knowing this, is true, especially in the last 20 years with this so-called war on terror after 9/11. I mean, they've lied about how much. Do we just know? Do we know about that? How much do we know that they've lied about? That's a staggering amount. And by the way, what have they done with the journalists that told us about all those lies? Oh yeah, that's it. He's been tortured in Belmarsh. So part 9 was released on Christmas Eve, and I don't think I've seen anything from this point on. I haven't seen. I saw the Li Fang piece, but I haven't seen anything. So I'm learning as we're going here now from this point on. New Year's, so Christmas Eve, quote, Twitter and other government agencies. So it wasn't just the CIA, the FBI. The Christmas Eve thread, quote, I should have waited a few days to publish, he says, Further details how channels of communication between the federal government and Twitter operated, and reveals how Twitter directly or indirectly received lists of flag contract from, quote, other government agencies, i.e. the CIA. Now, the CIA aren't meant to operate within America, are they? They're not meant to operate on American shores, correct? Well, here they are doing it, and here's the proof that they're doing it. The key revelations from Part 9 were CIA officials attended at least one conference with Twitter in the summer of 2020. And companies like Twitter and Facebook received, quote, OGA briefings at their regular industry meetings held in conjunction with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. The FBI and the, quote, Foreign Influence Task Force met regularly, not just with Twitter, but with Yahoo, Twitch, Cloudflare, LinkedIn, even Wikimedia. This is why I keep showing this. I'm not going to be able to find it now, am I? Come on, next one. This is why I keep showing this. I mean, this is just the Twitter files that we've seen. What about the YouTube files, the Google files, the Facebook files, the Reddit files, the TikTok files, Instagram files, Discord files? What about Twitter files UK? What about Twitter files Germany? What about YouTube/Google files UK? Do you see what I mean? This is a rabbit hole that just is never ending. We're not even seeing the tip of the iceberg here to just how much state control there has been in online discourse in the last few years. There was a tweet by Ben Swan that I think summed this up the other day. Ben Swan, the great journalist, said this: it would stun you to learn just how much of your news is written by your government for decades. Remember, we're just finding out about this now. This is not even the tip of the iceberg. He says for decades, government agents have been writing news stories and passing them to mainstream networks so they can then pass them down to local stations. When this blows up, it'll shock the world. If it blows up, Ben. If it does. But the only way it's going to, I think, is by people caring enough about it. You know, it's like with anything. Part 10 came out on December the 28th. And look, this has been going on now since the beginning of December. 6 weeks almost. And they are either not talking about it on the media, or wherever they talk about it on the media, they're dismissing it as if it's a non-story. This is government agencies lying to the public on purpose and shutting the public up. This is massive. It should be huge. Don't you agree? Marvin Gibbons says sometimes the newsreaders don't have a clue themselves. I said the other day, Marvin, if the newsreaders were truthful with you, they would say, honestly, we don't really know what's going on. We haven't got a clue. We don't really follow the news that much. We get these things to say. We say them to the camera and then they give us money. We don't really know what's going on. If they were truthful to you, that's what they'd say. They just repeat what words other people have written for them. They're not reporters, they're repeaters. And if they were honest with you, they would say, we don't have a clue what's going on, especially when it came to COVID. But they were the authority on it, weren't they, saying such authoritative stuff? Well, now we're finding out just how intertwined American agencies are with these tech companies. How bad is it in the UK? On part 10, on December the 28th, the Twitter files by David Zweig was entitled "How Twitter Rigged the COVID Debate." Okay, gotta be careful here. Hopefully Matt doesn't say anything that's going to get me banned, but we'll find out, won't we? David Zweig drills down into how Twitter throttled down information about COVID that was true but perhaps inconvenient for public officials, quote, discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed. There was the Great Barrington Declaration, wasn't there? That people at the NIH and Fauci, we found out through internal emails they were trying to discredit, professional doctors who were saying that no, we should treat the COVID outbreak a different way. We should protect the vulnerable because other reasons which I won't go into for the fear that I'll get banned on TikTok. But they discredited them, and obviously Twitter Files Part 10, well, the key revelations were Zweig found memos from Twitter personnel who'd liaised with the Biden administration officials who were, quote, very angry that Twitter had not deplatformed more accounts. Angry, the government were angry that the tech company hadn't deplatformed more accounts. The government were angry that a tech company didn't violate the First Amendment of the United States on their behalf. That's another way of saying that. And then, obviously, if you say this is happening at the time, there's no proof. So you're a conspiracy theorist and they'll gaslight you to high hell. White House officials, for instance, wanted attention on reporter Alex Berenson. Zweig also found countless instances of Twitter banning or labeling, quote, misleading accounts that were true or merely controversial. A Rhode Island physician named Andrew Boston, for instance, was suspended for, among other things, referring to the results of a peer-reviewed study on mRNA vaccines. Oh, my eyes are hurting me. I've been looking at the screen too long. The word conspiracy theory was the biggest psychological warfare I've ever done. I know, it was the CIA that popularised the term. They tried to call people who were questioning the Church Commission, JFK's assassination, conspiracy theorists. Seriously, do you believe the official story of JFK? That it was Lee Harvey Oswald? If you do, go and watch some of the documentaries by Oliver Stone. And give you a different perspective. Tell me what you think then. So Twitter Files Part 11 and 12 were by Matt Taibbi, and they came out on January the 3rd, so that's about 6 days away, 6 days ago, and it's entitled "How Twitter Let the Intelligence Community In and Twitter and the FBI Belly Button." The FBI belly button. Wow. There's the ugh. These two threads focus respectively on the second half of 2017 and a period stretching roughly from summer 2020 through to the present. The first describes how Twitter fell under pressure from Congress and the media to produce, quote, material showing a conspiracy of Russian accounts on their platform. I'll repeat that. Okay? These two threads focus respectively on the second half of 2017 and a period stretching roughly from summer of 2020 through to the present. The first describes how Twitter fell under pressure from Congress and the media to produce material showing a conspiracy of Russian accounts on their platform. So they're trying to basically say, look, can you promote this Russian disinformation by putting it there themselves? I think that's what the reading of that means. And the second thread shows how Twitter tried to resist fulfilling moderation requests for the State Department, but ultimately agreed to let state and other agencies send requests through the FBI, which Agent Chan calls, quote, the belly button of the USG. So they have a system of, you know, showing pressure of from Congress and the media to produce material showing a conspiracy of Russian accounts. So the media are coming up with, obviously, reports of Russian disinformation in the lead up to the election 2017. Is that midterms? It is. It's the timeline. From the summer of 2020 through to the present. So the second half of 2017 and a period stretching. So in the second half of 2017, Congress and the media pressure Twitter to show a conspiracy of Russian accounts on their platform to back up their Russian disinformation, Russiagate. Rubbish. Meanwhile, people who've been telling the truth about this silenced. They're the people who are being silenced. The people who are telling the truth about it. Meanwhile, the people, the FBI, the bots, they're getting whitelisted by Twitter in some cases. The revelations from those two threads, Matt says, are at the close of 2017, Twitter makes a key internal decision. Outwardly, the company would claim independence and promise that content would only be removed, quote, at our sole discretion. The internal guidance says in writing that Twitter will remove accounts, quote, identified by the US intelligence community as state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operations. So they're basically saying this person, yeah, it's inconvenient what they're saying. Call them a Russian bot, please. And you can say how the internal guidance in right. Let me just get my head around that. Did you understand that? At the close of 2017, Twitter makes a key internal decision. Outwardly, the company claims independence and promises that the content would only be removed at our sole discretion. Right, okay. So they're saying we're in control of everything. But internally, the guidance says in writing that Twitter will remove accounts, quote, identified by the US intelligence community as, quote, identified by the US intelligence community as a state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operations. So Twitter is saying to everybody, no, we're our own boss. We're not taking direction from anywhere. But internally, there's internal documents stating, no, we do this, and it's policy. And the second thread shows how Twitter took in requests from everyone. The Treasury, HHS, the NSA, the FBI, the DHS, etc. And also received personal requests from politicians like the Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, who asked to have journalist Paul Sperry suspended. Adam Schiff is possibly the biggest Russiagator there is. No congressman lent into the Russiagate conspiracy more than him. And here he is asking Twitter to suspend people, to violate their First Amendment rights. A sitting congressperson. I think he's on the head of like National Security Council or something like that, Adam Schiff. But there you go. That's an outline of the Twitter files so far, and that's what these journalists are showing, are proving that has happened. What do you think about that? What do you think about intelligence communities regulating these intelligence officials, pressuring and using geeks at tech companies to silence people who are telling the truth? This is not silencing people from misinformation. They're just saying it's misinformation that they're spreading. But in actual reality, in many cases, and I would say most cases, it's people telling the truth. It's just opposing the official narrative that the intelligence community, or rather the lies that the intelligence communities want you to hear. This is Mockingbird on a level that Bill Casey could not have dreamed about. Can you imagine if in response in that meeting with Bill Casey, Reagan would have gone, well, how about these social media companies that are coming? As somebody said in the chat, there's lots of funding from these CIA cutouts going into Facebook. I seem to remember that. I mean, was it Julian? I think Julian said that Julian Assange said that Facebook was the largest spying machine that the CIA ever invented, or something like that. God, I forgot. Right at the very top. Fact check by Snopes. Give it a break. Snopes is just as co-opted as... Gosh. Jack says, if they're paving the way to central bank digital currencies, imagine this coupled with a social credit system. I mean, this is China we're talking about here. This is China levels of surveillance. And I've even heard journalists in the US, so-called journalists, repeaters, argue that Matt Taibbi's not a journalist and these people aren't journalists. They're not really accredited journalists. It's like, you're arguing for the Russian and the Chinese system where you've only got accredited journalists. That's how China and Russia work. You're advocating for the very things that you say you oppose. Do you not see this with your levels of censorship that you're putting on people? But people just have been blinkered by Donald Trump. They just hate him so much, they're willing to throw all of their principles out the window, it seems. InQtel, the venture arm of the CIA, funded the project right from the start with $2 million. Is that true? I don't know whether that's true. InQtel, they're saying CIA cutout. There's lots of reports about that. Anyway, I won't go into it. Mockingbird on steroids, says Jack. Exactly. How do you know something is a cutout? Well, you mean you can see you can see the funding of it. For instance, if you ever hear the media talk about the National Endowment for Democracy, this is basically a project that now does outwardly what the CIA used to do under the table. That's basically what it is. It's what these cutouts are. There's plenty of them. Bellingcat is one in this country. It's not a CIA cutout, but it's a cutout of GCHQ. That's who funds them and who funds what they do. I'm not saying that these aren't, some of the people that work in there are not good people who are trying to get the truth of things, but these are intelligence cutouts that are manipulating what people are hearing so they can usher in the whatever these they want. If you can make people believe in the most absurdities, you can get them to go along with all sorts of atrocities, can't you? Wasn't it Michael Parenti that said that, or something similar? Cripes thought this was Rick Mail for a moment, says David. I get Rick Mail, I get Ricky Gervais, and I get Ian Beale. That's the three things that people say. That's the three people that people say I look like. How can I look like all three anyway? Marvin left. That's it. Anyway, that's it. I don't want to talk about the Twitter files anymore, but it's proving that what we've been talking about in independent media has been right all along for years. I dare say this is what Russiagate has spawned. Congratulations to everybody who went along with Russiagate. You went along with a conspiracy theory given to you by intelligence agencies in the United States and UK. Are you scared of climate lockdowns? Says Marvin Gibbons. Well, you don't have to abide. You don't have to abide by it. You don't have to abide by them. You don't have to. You don't have to believe their bullshit anymore. And it's bullshit. What they're talking about is bullshit. People are being controlled, and it's clear to see here. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg as well. Like I say, what are the UK? What's GCHQ doing in this country with people online? What level of surveillance do they have over people? How are they controlling just what people can hear and see? Like I say, if you can do that, you can get a person to do almost anything. And this is the FBI, proof of the FBI doing it with a major social media company. So they must be doing it with the rest of them. Which means however big you think it is, it's way bigger. Something to think about. And remember, they're getting paid for it. Twitter compensated $3.4 million for their monumental undertakings. Do you think we will have 15-minute cities? Well, not if people don't want them. That's what I think, right? Okay. Jay says because it's false or hate speech. Well, if you're okay with the state deciding what is a falsity and what is hate speech, and silencing that person and having them, memory hold, then congratulations. The Communist Party of China and Vladimir Putin are very happy with you and agree with you 100%. If you're okay with what the FBI are doing here because you're saying it's for XYZ and they're just doing this, that and the other, then congratulations. The Chinese Communist Party will be in at 100% with agreement with you, because that's how China operates and Russia. All right. Okay, that's it, everybody. I wanted to talk about the Twitter files today, and I have done. Oh, I've just remembered there is another bit. Oh, I've closed it down now. Never mind. There was a video that I wanted to show you, but it's okay. I think I've made my point. Remember, this is the same in other avenues. Remember, look at what they made people believe in 2016. Do you see what I mean? This is what I want to really, when I'll end this stream now, but think about 2016 and think about everything that you were told with regards to Russiagate and somehow Vladimir Putin controlling Donald Trump. Do you remember? And think about how the media were all speaking from the same hymn sheet. When I say the media, I mean CNN, MSNBC, and the media over here, the legacy media. They were all singing from the same hymn sheet. It's almost like they got their marching orders from, do you see what I mean? In the same way that Twitter were. So you imagine, you look back to 2016. Well, if they were doing that, that means Russiagate was as I reported at the time, and as many other people reported, a great big intelligence conspiracy theory that they got people to go along with because they couldn't control Trump, seemingly. And he was dangerous to them. It wasn't because Trump was a good guy fighting for you, no. They just couldn't control him. That's the problem. So that means if that's a lie, Russiagate's a lie, and they're conspiring with Twitter to spread misinformation with regards to Arab language accounts, etc., etc., just how much of the major stories, not just in the last 6 years, but the last 10, 20, 30 years, are false? We know Russiagate was false, at least I'm convinced it was. I wrote a book about it. What about the gas attack in Syria? Well, that makes no sense at all, does it? Assad gassed his own people right at the point where he was going to win the war against the rebels, doing the one thing that brought in the giant powers greater than him. He did the one thing that allowed them to bomb him and turn the... That makes no sense, does it? He was educated in the UK, wasn't he, Assad? So he can't be stupid. Well, mind you, Boris Johnson was educated in the UK. You see my point, though? So, what about that? Was that true? Well, what about the Skripal poisonings? How much of that? 2020 election, 2016 election, Hunter Biden laptop, Burisma, Ukraine. How much that we're hearing through official channels are true and how much is false? Because I've got to tell you, for 5-6 years, I've been doing videos just as sort of like a therapy almost for myself, to keep myself sane. Telling people that they're lying about this story or that story. All of the stories I've just mentioned to you, I've caught them in lies. So how much of our history is true based on that? If you extrapolate it out and you start thinking, well, how invested and embedded in our news media are the intelligence services in the US and the UK and France and Germany, etc., and all the Western countries. And if that's the case, and they are lying to us about pretty much everything, and really they are, to what ends are they doing it? Is it the CBDCs, as people keep saying in the chat? Is it the World Economic Forum? It does play into that story, doesn't it? It does coincide with what the WEF are doing. Rishi Sunak is a member of the World Economic Forum, I believe, isn't he? These people are deciding the future of billions. And these people, by the way, are the people who have done things in the past that are horrific and have lied about literal wars that have killed millions. That's what they've lied about. And these are the same people now telling you all of this disinformation on behalf of intelligence companies. And we are seeing it through these Twitter files. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg. I believe that this is a gigantic story. And I also believe the reason that the mainstream media in this country are not talking about it, and the reason why the media in the US have shut down all talk of it and poo-pooed it, is because they are just as complicit as Twitter have been in the last few years, only they've been complicit for the last 100. And if that's the case, how much of our last 100 years history do you think is true? And how much is bullshit? And what can we do going forward to make sure that we live in a world that seemingly the truth matters again. Because this is all true, yet none of it seems to matter. Are we now in a world where we are living in idiocracy? The truth should matter. You need to go back 4,000 years, says David. Maybe. Maybe. How much of our history is actually true? History that we're told. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much for joining me. Please, if you're watching, if you enjoy this content, go through to my mailing list at my website. You can see it on the first page. Sign up and you'll get a notification of when I go live in future. I don't have a regular schedule. It's a bit erratic. So sign up at the mailing list and you'll get a notification. And whenever I'm going to do, dropping any videos or that sort of thing. Thanks very much for your support. Those who do. I can't do this without you. This is totally user funded. Like I say, I do this really for therapy more than money. But any donations really would be appreciated. Thanks very much. The Twitter files is huge. Talk about it to your friends and family. Talk about just how badly the intelligence companies have been embedded in our social media companies, and talk about how this is just the tip of the iceberg. And hopefully we'll see some action. We see some people about to change things. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Support independent media. And I'm going to go away now. Take care.